In today's video, we're going to be having a conversation about the history of the Pokemon market, taking a look at some of the things that happened in the past, and if reprints weren't to happen, would everything just kind of go up from here, and if there's anything you realistically have to worry about. But before we jump into it, as always, we do weekly giveaways. All you have to do to enter is leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. We post pre-recorded content each and every week for you to comment and like on. And lastly, we've got links down in the description below. We've got 3 spots left, if I'm correct, for our wholesale Patreon. So I highly recommend you check that out if you are interested in joining the group and getting access to wholesale prices for Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and other items alike. And then outside of that, if you want to join the awesome community of like-minded individuals, our link to the Discord is down below. But jumping into the topic. So this one's going to be a little bit of a different topic of conversation. You know, obviously, my life, specifically Tuesdays and Thursdays and comment sections, is answering the same question time and time again, right? So I won't bore you when it comes to that with the videos. That's what those days are for. But one question I feel like I haven't really been able to have a conversation about you guys with regards to the market, both within Pokemon, what my general assessment of how it is, and then just the market as a whole outside of Pokemon and how this could play effect to the future price, right? We always have a conversation when it comes to Pokemon and we look at, you know, the general supply of the product and we look at the general demand, which for, you know, general macroeconomic theory, obviously that's what you should for the most part look at, but that's really just dumbing it down. Let's have a conversation about the history of Pokemon and how it's performing right now. Now, obviously, we haven't used this chart in a very long time, but one of the charts that I like to look at, historically speaking, which I feel like was a good representative of just kind of Google search terms, and obviously as the internet has become more prevalent, you start to see this chart, you know, increase over time, but it is the Google Trends chart. It gives you kind of a good reference for looking at Google searching terms such as Pokemon cards. And as you can see, the peak time in which Pokemon cards as a whole were being looked up was in around February time. And then it kind of fell off a little bit, but it saw a recent resurgence going into the end of last year. So even if you say we're at a low point within the, you know, past months or two since December, we're still at record high levels in terms of overall Google Trends or Google searches for the keyword term Pokemon cards, right? So Pokemon demand is still at an all-time high. We're still at a point where, sure, we're not hitting that 2021 back end of the year demand where things are just going hyperbolic, but as we've seen with things such as Evolving Skies hitting $400, things such as, you know, CUPCs pushing $400 and other items alike, which have just been absolutely skyrocketing in price, we know the demand for the set in Pokemon is extremely high. Next up, you guys probably have already seen this metric before, but we might as well talk about it once again. There's been over 9 billion Pokemon cards that were printed last year. This was posted in July, so technically it wouldn't be last year, it would 2022. So this would be 2021. Basically, that is a fifth of all cards that were ever made. So really kind of sink that in, that literally, you know, 20% of all cards that were ever made in the history was all printed in 2021 when it comes to Pokemon. So if that isn't indicative of demand, I don't know once again what is. And so this really goes to show the strength once again of the Pokemon market. Taking a look at TCG Player and seeing, okay, what has kind of been going on in terms of prices. We obviously know that outside of the items that I've recently mentioned with the Celebration Ultra Premium Collection and Evolving Skies, we know that most items at this point have just been continuing to climb in terms of market value. Everything that you could have potentially picked, whether it be an Astral Radiance booster box, whether it be a Fusion Strike booster box, whether it be Chilling Reign Battle Styles, doesn't matter. If you got in about a year ago or 6 months ago, or basically when the sets themselves were sub $100, I mean, you could have easily got in at $75, $80 for a lot of these items, but let's say you didn't. You still got in at sub 100. You're still up profit regardless of which one of these items you picked. You know, some of them perform better than others, but you couldn't really have gone wrong in terms of missing out on, you know, not securing any profits or have gone on a loss, because everything in the market has just been continuing once again to go up. And obviously, as the supply continues to dwindle and the demand stays the way it is, this is nothing but a trend that is going to continue to happen. One of the items as well that I've been talking about for the longest time, the Charizard Ultra Premium Collection, most recently this week actually, of my distributors that I order from, it's official. They've all sold out of the ones that I order from. So I've got 4 distributors in particular, and I called them up both today, the ones that had some still left in stock for a while, and they both informed me that this week they officially sold out and they just no longer have any supply of them. So it's no longer just, oh yeah, we're getting scarce supply of product on when it comes to booster boxes and elite trainer boxes. It's now specialty collections that were overprinted, such as the CUPC. It's just going to continue to get worse from here until things change. So the question has to be asked, right? With more or less the setup of the point that I'm making with this video. We see the market's doing well. We see supply is dwindling. Reprints are, to our knowledge, not coming anytime soon or at all. Can the Pokemon really be defeated? Can it be stopped? And you have 2 different roads you can kind of go through, right? Road number 1, which is everything stays the same way it is. This system, this trend that we've been in for the past year and a half, it continues. If you have that vision, then obviously you're saying Evolving Skies, $500 in the next 2 months. Chilling Reign, hitting $200 by end of year. Most of these booster boxes and other products are going to go crazy. I mean, Crown Zenith, the specialty elite trainer boxes from the Pokemon Center website, I think they're selling for around $130 right now. I mean, talk about a pickup. That's a 100% return over a month. Maybe even less than a month if I'm correct. But it's an insane return to get for picking up an item in such a short period of time. And so, not to make everyone feel FOMO, but if you are one of those individuals that takes that route, then obviously everything is going to continue to climb up. Now, is that the beat that I'm drumming? Of course not. That is not my opinion, but we're talking about situations and scenarios and looking at, okay, what if we're wrong? Or what could kind of prevent this from happening? What could be the reality of the situation when talking about the market? So that is one scenario you can kind of look at. You can say to yourself, I potentially believe, and I'm not saying I, but you as the investor, believe in. Here's another situation. Let's say that the market doesn't end up breeding more reprints, right? But let's say that something switches. And what do I mean by something switches? Well, if you look at outside the history of the Pokemon market, but you look at the history of the United States and what's been going on, I think that is something to really consider when looking at and making decisions on if truly everything is 100% risk-free. Because obviously when we talk about investments, there's always going to be a risk, there's always going to be a downside. We always have to kind of counteract these downsides. And although everyone likes to say, okay, well, if reprints don't happen, then it's just 100% a moonshot, nothing's stopping us. Well, that's not entirely true, because obviously when it came to Pokemon product as a whole, historically sets that have been out of print obviously will go up over time, but there's still times in the market in which economic turmoil can happen and you're going to see that lead to prices correcting. And what do I mean by this? 2007, 2008 is obviously an example of that, and that's why I think it's relevant to have a conversation, because regardless of whether this is 100% all about Pokemon as a channel or not, I think this is a prevalent conversation to have because I want people to be careful. The sentiment in the market that I'm starting to see is to a level of bullishness that is almost FOMO inducing on another level that we haven't honestly seen in a very long time. Like, we've seen it happen in 2021, obviously, where people were like, booster boxes are never going down to $100 ever again. And it's starting to kind of happen, and it's happening even stronger now that, you know, people are more, I don't want to say this, hyperbolic than ever after we've come out of the pandemic. So one chart I kind of want to show you guys, or I don't know if I want to say a chart, but it is more or less a conversation about what recently happened with Silicon Valley Bank. So if you guys don't know, more or less something very similar to what happened in '08 is happening right now, which I think should show a lot of red flags. So during the funding boom of 2021, Silicon Valley Bank was getting a large amount of deposits, which later peaked at the end of the year to roughly around $200 billion. It later invested the money in bonds, which then obviously, as interest rates went up, the value of the bonds that were secured during that time went down, because as interest rates increase, then typically you see a hedge against those interest rates by people investing in bonds, by bonds rates going up. So more or less at the end of the day, you've seen an economic collapse within Silicon Valley Bank happen most recently, and it's starting to mirror what happened in '08. And obviously I could sit here and I can read this whole thing in front of you guys, but you guys can look on the screen and you can see. So I don't feel like I have to give a full-on, you know, economic lecture about the dangerousness of what could happen if we were just to repeat itself. But based on what's happening right now, '08 ended with the banks getting bailed out because they made reckless decisions on behalf of the government, saying, hey, if you make these reckless decisions, then we're going to bail you out. So feel free to be stupid, more or less. What just recently happened with Silicon Valley Bank, they made reckless decisions, and the government is once again going to bail them out, which is going to incentivize them, as long as this system keeps happening, to repeat itself. So more or less, the moral of the story of this is human nature, and people don't ever learn. But outside of that, looking at how this could generally affect the overall economy, you're starting to see a lot of people outside of Pokemon, but more in the stock sector, more in the banking sector, even a little bit in the real estate sector, get a little bit more fearful on what this could potentially breed, because obviously there was an expectation that we were going to see inflation go down. Inflation has gone down slightly. I think we're at 7% instead of 9%. If someone wants to correct me on that, they can. But the rate of inflation, to be at a healthy rate, should be at about that 2% mark. So we're still well above what a healthy inflation rate would look like when you're talking about a healthy economy. So it's one of these things that I want to really bring light upon, because, hey, let's have this conversation. Let's say Pokemon reprints don't happen. Does that mean that you're 100% going to be able to have just, you know, moonshot, everything's going up, we're never going to see the end of it, no reprints are happening, the economy's looking fantastic? Well, I'm here to say that, guys, there's one thing that's always going to be true in life when it comes to investing, and that's there's always a risk. You can't say to yourself there's never not a risk, because then it wouldn't be an investment. It would just be free real estate or free money, right? And this is not what this is. There are economic factors at scale that are needed to be considered when looking at it face value. And so there's one thing you take away from this video. Obviously, it's be cautious, be smart. Everyone asks me all the time, Eli, what's your best investment to pick up? Eli, what's your favorite item that you really like right now? Well, everything has started to dry up. And obviously I made a video about it a week and a half ago where I said, hey, in terms of sealed product, there isn't really much that I like at this moment in time. Obviously, you know, we can take a look at some of the singles and we can see if there's opportunity there for flipping. But in all honesty, I think it would be a disservice if I were to try and pick items that I like, because most of them, sure, I can say I like them, quote unquote, based on what the current market price is of them and compared to everything else. But it's honestly a scary situation for myself, because even if I were to say, hey guys, Evolving Skies, it's obviously not going to go reprint, and let's say I knew that definitively, then why not invest in it? Because it's just going to go up another $100-$200. Well, what happens if in 2-3 months we see more economic turmoil within the market, and that starts to ripple into the retail sector, and we see that effect happen in Pokemon, right? I can sit here and I can talk all day about what I think is going to happen with Pokemon and the pricing effects, because we know that when we look at the history of it and we look at distribution and supply and the overall demand, like that's easy for me to kind of forecast. But there's other things that it's a lot harder for me to decipher, and so I don't like to take that risk, or I don't like to take that chance, knowing that, sure, even if a reprint doesn't happen, there's still other things that could cause prices to fall, and so I would much rather be safe than sorry and still take those opportunities, right? It's kind of like how people were, making statements when I said that after Chilling Reign got to about $110, I think, or $105, I said that it's extremely difficult for me to justify telling people to get in it. And people are like, that's crazy. If you had gotten in, now you're looking at the price of 143, 145. And although that's true, obviously, if you had gotten in at 110, you still would have made a profit. It wouldn't have been a big one because you have to consider fees and shipping unless you sold locally, but who knows? But regardless, you still would have made a profit. But the risk, in my mind, just continuously increases. And I know everyone has this mindset of we're just going to continue to get free tendies, but there's going to be an end date for this. There always is, right? Whether it be an economic collapse, that's always going to have an end date. Whether it be an economic boom, it's always going to have an end date. Everything will have an end. The trend will continue until the trend reverses, and then a new trend will be formed. That's just the life of investing. And so for me, I'm just going to take the advice of Warren Buffett, which is be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. So more or less, the overall sentiment and takeaway, once again, of this video is be cautious, guys. I see more and more people messaging me about FOMOing in on prices because the emotions of everything going up consistently and then feeling like they missed out is extremely high right now. And I just really want to make sure that everyone's cautious, because there's more than just if reprints happen or if they don't reprint, what else could happen instead that could lead to prices correcting. But as far as it goes, a little bit of a shorter video today, but that'll be all. Hopefully you guys found some value out of this. Like I said, a little bit different from my usual video. We still had a discussion about the history of Pokemon, looking at its current strength. I'm still a huge fan of Pokemon. Obviously, in the future, long term, I think it's going to do amazing. I think it's doing great right now. But that doesn't mean that in terms of overall strength of one sector couldn't lead to a crumbling in another if the overall economy were to shift in a different direction, because it's going to bring the retail sector down with it. But that is all for today's video. Make sure if you want to enter into our weekly giveaways, you leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We post pre-recorded content for you to do so each and every week, Monday, Wednesday. And lastly, links are down in the description below if you're interested in joining our wholesale access tier with our Patreon, where you can get access to distribution prices for Pokemon and other products. And of course, if you are interested in joining the Discord and be with a lot of like-minded individuals, please make sure to check that down in the description. But that is all. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Until then, I will see you all on Thursday. Peace.